started talking about, this course is about Picasso and Spanish culture, right? And so why is Picasso such a good example? When actually my Picasso project started as for my culture class, for my Spanish culture class. And he's a very good example because he's a very Spanish artist. And there's no question that Picasso is a Spanish artist. And so we looked at that and some of the works that he represents, and it's not only the themes that he deals with, the bullfight, and just as one example, Spanish customs, Spanish fairs, and things like that, but also the colors that he uses, right? So we've seen that the intensity of the colors of Picasso, you could never confuse his art with French artists. And that's what made him very popular when he came to France. Actually, he kind of intensified that a little bit because he knew that you could market his Spanishness. So we see examples like this. And I used that example from later on in his career to see that, just one example from the 30s, to see how he kept doing the same thing from the very beginning of his life when he was a child all the way to the end. And I can show you, and we will see some of those later on, of bullfighting and bullfighters even towards the end of his life. So that's aspect one, right? Picasso's a Spanish artist, no question about it. Another thing is the idea of Picasso as a foreigner. We kind of stressed that. So he went to Paris, as many other artists did, and he was not welcome at first, so he felt very much rejected, right? So that's the idea. And there have been exhibitions and books written about Picasso, the foreigner, the fact that he felt as an outsider. That marked his career also, person looking at art from the outside. So the kind of art that he did, for example, with Cubism, is really analyzing art from the outside. And the famous Blue Period, he emphasized the outside nature of people, okay, so outcasts. Prostitutes, we saw poor people, blind people, right? So all of these people that were really outcasts of society, Picasso very much identified with. So that's the other idea. Picasso as an outsider looking in. And that again is going to mark his work. And then the third point that we have gone over is the fact that Picasso was a multicultural artist. He was bilingual, actually trilingual. He also wrote in Spanish, French. He spoke Spanish and French fluently, and he also in Catalan. So that's it, the third language. But it's not only bicultural, bilingual in that, but he kept referring to other artists. So another thing that defines Picasso is the idea that he was always absorbing other cultures. Okay? And he's being accused of plagiarism for that reason, because a lot of people saw, I told you the story that he would visit people's studios and they would cover their art because they thought that he was going to copy them. But he took from everybody. He says, you can steal from everybody except from yourself. That's the Picasso quote. Right? So we see that he refers to art of the past, from the Renaissance, to fairly current artists like Cézanne there, with the Harlequin, and then Renoir, who was very famous at the time also, but also the paintings of El Greco, we saw, right, it's another 15th century artist, and Murillo. So painters of Spanish tradition, but also French tradition, old and new. So Picasso was constantly referring to other cultures, other venues, and from that he kind of brought it. So those are the three things that really mark Picasso and make him a very special artist, especially the last thing, multiculturalism, because this is something that we really encourage nowadays. But the outside nature also makes you feel very close to him. For example, people that immigrate, like in my case as an immigrant, identify with the idea of being, to a certain degree, an outsider, and also the Spanishness. Okay, so those are three aspects of Picasso. So we will talk about some of these things, I hope, in some of your presentations. So one of the first things that we're going to look at is the idea of color. Color was important for Picasso. Picasso was fairly aware of form, but he was also very aware of color, as we can see from the so-called blue and rose period, or the intensity that we see in the early works, the red, the yellow. Right? So color for Picasso was very important for him.
I will be talking about Picasso's use of colors, especially in El Periodo Azul y El Periodo Rosa. So, ¿qué es color? Y por qué es importante? So, color is the visual perception based on the electromagnetic spectrum. But what does that mean? Color is basically how we're able to, or how someone has la capacidad de interpretar diferentes tonos, hues, and or shades. So if someone were to be colorblind, they would still be able to see a contraste between rojo y azul. ¿Por qué es importante? Do y'all know why color is important?
It shows life in many
There's no particular
different
wrong answer.
It shows life in many different ways for anybody because I can see color differently than the person sitting next to me or a person that is older or a person that is colorblind. Any colorblind person doesn't see the same thing.
We associate colors with different feelings.
Yeah, so that's basically how I kind of summed it up. Invocar emoción. So in el periodo azul, blue is associated with sadder colors, especially for the time that it was done in, where he was basing all of his, or most of his paintings off of the death of his friend. Crea estado de ánimo. So how the artist approaches the painting and how they put their feeling into it. Y tono, how the viewer interprets that feeling. And transmitir significado, so how that all applies to a certain message. Because if we were all gris, if we were all without color, then, I mean, there'd be a lot of changes, to be honest. So, I won't bore you with the details of color theory, because there's a lot. But, in gist, there's at least 3 tiers to how the color wheel is split up. Los colores primeros es rojo, azul y amarillo. Los colores secundarios, morado, naranja y verde. Los colores terciarios, which there's like 6 of them, but we won't have to cover all of them. The main part of that is rojo, morado, rojo, naranja, amarillo, naranja, amarillo, verde, azul, verde, y azul, morado. They all have their own significant names, but we're not going to have to go over that. So I split that into today's presentation as 2 different tiers, where there are los colores cálidos, warmer colors, and then los colores fríos. So, ¿cómo te haces sentir este color? How does this color make you feel? Height.
Right.
¿Y ahora?
Well, in high school, that's my high school.
Gracias.
So, when I first had this example to me, it was from my design teacher my freshman year. And the premise of it is that whenever the blue is on top of the yellow, it makes the whole composition feel cooler. None of us really felt that way whenever he first presented it to us. I think we all still felt that it was warmer, but to each, however you feel.
You can almost see some green on the edges because they kind
Where
of,
they're
your
mixing.
eyes mix the two. Yeah.
So, in Picasso's work, how this is reflected, los colores fríos, you can see that with this, we can experience how azul evocas sad colors, tranquilo, but also on the opposite end, it can be stability or trust. Picasso's meaning was for poverty, loneliness, and despair, so we can see how that played a part into it. And then in his rose period, he's using more of the warm colors, so some reds, some yellows from the Spanish flag. But in this particular painting, we noticed that The red is entirely his background, and he's Greece. So it almost has the opposite effects, but the same meaning to how he used it in the blue period. So the facial expressions are the same, but the energy is different. We know that he is a performer, a service performer, so there is that energy, a miracle behind him, but him being Greece really takes away from that, and it, has a reflection of maybe he isn't as happy as his background appears to be.
That's the point that I made, that it combines this blue and the rose period. That transition is very clearly marked in the works. There's not a clear separation, blue and then all of a sudden rose, but you see some blue in the rose, just like you saw some little light colors also in the blue.
Which brings me to my next point, actually, how all of the colors, despite them being los colores cálido or los colores frío, each color has the capacity to be warmer or cooler. So, how does this color make you feel?
Dark, cold.
Your?
Yeah, it lightens it up. Yeah.
It lightens it up.
It almost makes it look like a midnight green color now, and it doesn't look black.
Oh yeah, I don't know why this projector looks like that. On my screen it's like forest
Well,
green.
no, like when
Yeah.
Yeah, the color, this is not, it's present.
It looked black when the yellow square wasn't there, but
Right.
when it got put there, it almost looks like a green now.
Yeah. So it definitely brightened it up. It definitely, we can see how color has that effect. No matter how it's presented or how it's paired with other things, it still invokes that same emotion where it feels warmer. Like you maybe actually physically feel it, or even just internally, how it makes you emotionalized. So, to Picasso's work, his work with this featured his girlfriend, and we can see how this is cooler red, and the meaning to it has a softer meaning. So maybe there's more sensuality between them, there's more intimacy. We're hidden in a corner, so we're kind of tucked away between what they had going on. And in his other example, this is a lot deeper, there's a stronger, intenser feeling because of the warm blue that's being used. It's foreboding, intense. And then so, when they're together, we can see from previous examples how we've seen how they interacted with each other. So they can be complementary to each other, where they work like as a couple, as this couple does, which is actually, synonymous to how it is. So his red being complementary to her green, and then even her, the blue of the window being complementary to the pink. Or how they oppose each other, where it seems almost like he took her to this restaurant, but she's avoiding, so she's slipping out of the red booth. And then in this one, where they just beautifully hold together, and there's a balance in the entire composition.
Which I also, these are both very pink images, very rose images, but I'm also getting two different feelings from these paintings. A la izquierda está la harem.
The harem.
The harem de Picasso, and a la derecha es three nudes. And so once again on the right, I'm getting more of the feeling of beauty, and you're showing the woman's beauty with putting them all around these flowers. And so I'm getting more of a feeling of we're showing off women beauty. And then in this one, I don't want to use the word boring, but it's almost boring to look at compared to there unless you get up close.
But I see sensuality. I think the first presentation that we saw that the left one is very sensual.
But the right one isn't. The right one is more, like, when looking at it just off the bat, like just looking, I think this one looks boring compared to the one on the right, because the one on the right has more things.
What do people think? Is it everybody agrees?
I can see where you're coming from, because it's
more like a muted palette.
Yes.
and it's
Right.
like-
But this one's more sensual than that one. That one's showing beauty and not like sexualness, but this one is.
I mean, not supposed to be in this painting, but it's supposed to look at this.
Yeah, but this one is more of like, oh, look, there's natural women beauty, like Mother Nature. Yeah, but then this one is like, ooh, do we look? Because yes, it's more born to the eye unless you look into it and you perceive the image or the painting, how Picasso paints. And here, a la izquierda es the family of acrobats de Picasso, and a la derecha es circus parade. And when I look at these two images, I actually prefer Picasso's over, gosh, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's last name, and I even Googled it, like how to pronounce it, and I don't know, Seurat? Seurat, okay. And then Seurat is it's muted. And so when I look at these paintings, the first thing I notice about any painting is the color. So like how you were talking about, we see color as emotion. I see the left painting without looking at what the painting actually is. I look at, oh, it looks more lively than the one on the right. So it's less boring, as I would say. But also the one on the left, like we talked about in class, it has hidden messages. Like the hand with the 5 fingers, and then Picasso is, like that is Picasso in the painting, and he's holding his hand behind his, what is he hiding? That sense of, well, this is a very French-esque painting, but he's not French, so he's hiding something. Versus the one on the right, it almost, it gives very square, and everything is just so precise, and it's separated, and this family of acrobats is not separated, they're together, it looks like they're on this journey together, which I also, these are both very pink images, very rose images, but I'm also getting 2 different feelings from these paintings. A la izquierda está la harem.
The harem.
The harem de Picasso, and a la derecha es 3 nudes. And so once again on the right, I'm getting more of the feeling of beauty, and you're showing the woman's beauty with putting them all around with these flowers. And so I'm getting more of a feeling of we're showing off women beauty. And then in this one, I don't want to use the word boring, but it's almost boring to look at compared to there unless you get up close.
But I see sensuality. I think the first presentation that we saw that the left one is very sensual.
But the right one isn't. The right one is more, like, when looking at it just off the bat, like just looking, I think this one looks boring compared to the one on the right, because the one on the right has more things.
What do people think? Is it everybody agrees?
I can see where you're coming from, because it's more like a muted palette.
Yes.
and it's
Right.
like-
But this one's more sensual than that one. That one's showing beauty and not like sexualness, but this one is.
I mean, not supposed to be in this painting, but it's supposed to look at this.
Yeah, but this one is more of like, oh, look, there's natural women beauty, but like Mother Nature. Yeah, but then this one is like, ooh, do we look? Because yes, it's more born to the eye unless you look into it and you perceive the image or the painting, how Picasso paints. And here, a la izquierda es the family of acrobats de Picasso, and a la derecha es circus parade. And when I look at these 2 images, I actually prefer Picasso's over, gosh, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's last name, and I even Googled it, like how to pronounce it, and I don't know, Seurat? Okay. And then Seurat is it's muted. And so when I look at these paintings, the first thing I notice about any painting is the color. So like how you were talking about, we see color as emotion. I see the left painting without looking at what the painting actually is. I look at, oh, it looks more lively than the one on the right. So it's less boring, as I would say. But also the one on the left, like we talked about in class, it has hidden messages. Like the hand with the 5 fingers, and the Picasso is like, that is Picasso in the painting, and he's holding his hand behind his, what is he hiding? That sense of, well, this is a very French-esque painting, but he's not French, so he's hiding something. Versus the one on the right, it almost, it gives very square, and everything is just so precise, and it's separated, and this family of acrobats is not separated, they're together, it looks like they're on this journey together.
So my similarities are going to be exploration. They both kind of explore in their own ways. So they're focusing on women, not as objects, like I pointed out in the beginning. They're just kind of celebrating women, celebrating sex. There's color. In Don's, it's colorful to read. It's colorful in his words, but Picasso is quite literally very colorful, there's a lot of interesting color choices in his paintings. Emphasis in line and forms. Yeah, so line and forms in a poem, you guys know, but like line and forms, and like if we think of the red woman, that's it's almost abstract. It's not abstract, but it's almost like, it's like the lines are.
But there is something exploratory about it.
Yeah.
The idea of exploration that you see in the poem also. It's almost like he's going into the different parts of the woman as he kind of have this encounter with her.
Yeah, and I wrote, that's on my numbers, one of these. No, it's the next, sorry. Anyways, so there's more exploration from his perspective, because he is, after all, only a man, and they're both exploring women through the male gaze. I took notes in Spanish, now I'm speaking English. I'm so sorry, guys. Yeah, okay, anyways. Emotional, it's a very emotional and vulnerable states that they're both in, and there's symbolizing. Picasso's symbolism of women could mean fertility, because we know he had issues with that. Not him, but his girlfriend at the time. And then John Donne is comparing a woman kind of to Heaven's Gates, which is, anyways. Differences between the two, obviously medium. One of them is like written, and one of them is painted. And then another form of expression would be like, it's emotional versus it's almost logical. John Donne is like, take off your clothes, you're so hot. And then Picasso's like, you are so hot with no clothes on. And it's just emotional. It's very different. So, and then this is overall theme, I think, could be seen either the same or different. That's the thing I wanted to ask you guys about. Did you guys think they were viewing women in the same light or different lights or varying lights?
Picasso did not like women. He was very manipulative, and he would sleep with a lot of women, but he did not respect them, and he didn't see them as people.
Okay. So do you think it was kind of objectifying, like the way he would paint them?
It's very common in that time for people to have painted women naked, so I think like it makes sense of the time. Like, so
Okay.
if you're asking for the perspective of now, then yes. But then, no, not really.
Yeah, I was thinking of back then, like in the day, do you think he was just doing?
This is from the blue period. Este es del primer periodo. ¿Qué es lo que ven aquí? Basado en el trasfondo y las personas. What is it that you see specifically about the background and the people? What is it that you see? The backgrounds. The composition of the no, similar o diferente.
They're a little distracting.
Okay. Okay. ¿Por qué dices eso? There's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. Okay. There's a lot of things going on. Okay. I like that. That's really good. ¿Algo más?
También los personajes están descentrados, están en la parte izquierda.
Uh-huh.
So your eyes have to move to find them.
Pero sabemos que están afuera, ¿verdad? We know that they're outside. There's a clear background in this composition.
The guys are like really pressed into their women, so maybe on the right side, like he's pushing her out of the composition, while on the left he's pushing her into it.
Interesante. Yo no miré eso. Ya ven, es algo que aprendemos juntos. It's something that we learn when we discuss out loud You can see that. Okay, este es otro ejemplo aquí. ¿Qué es lo que la diferencia? Ya es similarities, pero ahora la diferencia entre el trasfondo and the background of these paintings. So if we isolate the women, because the title is Old Women Frying Eggs. Light and dark, okay?
They both bring a focus to the women.
Okay.
One has something in the background.
Yeah, so we see that there's still some other stuff going on, right? The title is Old Woman Frying Eggs, so like it's the woman with the eggs, but then there's some other stuff going on, ¿verdad? Y aquí,
No, nada.
okay, entonces ese es el periodo azul. Continuando aquí, podemos ver algo similar. ¿Por qué piensan que estos dos retratos, these two portraits, what do you see the similarities between the sizing of the portraits? ¿Qué es lo que ven?
En qué casos son diferentes.
Decir, de mi caso contra los otros. ¿Ah? Hay un enfoque en la cara. Okay? Like on your wallpaper, right? So sometimes you want just a picture, if it's you and your best friend, or you and your boyfriend, or even your cat, like you might just want to highlight the face. Or you're trying to give a background story. What could be a background story of here that we don't see here?
She's probably in the dressing room, or she just got dressed. Or she's ready for party.
Hay una historia. There's obviously the artist is trying to paint some sort of story, and he's choosing to use a background. But Picasso, what did he do with the background here? ¿Qué hizo con el trasfondo?
He eliminated it.
Why do you think? What could be a reason?
Solo quería la cara. Solo quería.
And what is the message that he's trying to say with that? Or what could be a message?
Stop reading. Focus on just her.
Ya, el enfoque solo en ella. ¿Ok? Ahora podemos ver en el periodo rosa. Una vez más, ¿qué es lo que vemos aquí in the background? Specifically in the background, we have two boys dressed in blue.
En la escena se ve más como posado, como el background se ve como elaborado por él, y el de la derecha se ve como algo más natural, más it's like transmitir de que el niño está en algún lugar que trae paz o no.
Okay. Aquí el otro de periodo rosado.
Uno es un desierto y el otro es el campo. And then we got over the blue period y nos pasamos a un periodo rosa. Y en el periodo rosa me encantó esta fotografía. Podemos ver que ya no, las mamás no son unas mamás tristes, unas mamás pobres, unas mamás así, sino que podemos ver en su rostro que es una mujer muy bien cuidada, tiene ropa, maquillaje, una mujer muy elegante, tiene aretes, tiene un peinado. Se ve como cuando una mujer desea ser mamá y se cumple. It gives me like the vibes of a woman that really wanted to be a mom. Y me acuerda muchísimo a una partecita de una canción que se llamaba Índigo por Camilo y Eva Luna, y les voy a leer un poquito de las lyrics, ¿ok? Y ellos dicen en una parte: porque llegó a mi vida el amor de mi vida, yo se lo pedí al de arriba, pero contigo se le fue la mano. Me da esa energía de que cuando realmente quieres algo y pasa, es bonito. Y así se ve esa imagen, como realmente ellos lo querían y lo podían tener y lo tuvieron. Los colores me transmiten mucha paz, mucho, como yo de verdad quería eso. Y terminamos con estas dos fotografías. ¿Y cómo dirían ustedes que las compararían?
How are they similar? Is a woman with child. Los tonos.
You can't see her other arm, but she's like really looking at her belly, so like there's like a tear for the other one.
They both have the same como la estructura facial de estar admirando su pancita, de estar admirando su maternidad, diría yo. Y aunque nunca logré encontrar el artista de esta fotografía, es una pintura muy vendida en Etsy. Yeah, I was like, what's the, I don't know, pero es muy vendida y se me hacen las dos en forma de humildad, de aceptación, y se me hace muy diferente al periodo azul. Se ve como mujeres que desean ser madres, que están admirando crear una vida dentro de ellas. Y para terminar, les quiero decir que, al igual que todas las personas, Picasso pasó por diferentes etapas en su vida. Está en nosotros tomar cada etapa como una lección, aprender de ella y salir adelante.
Introduction. Pablo Picasso, a revolutionary Spanish painter and sculptor who profoundly influenced modern art, his diverse styles
Innovative.
Thank you, techniques transformed the artistic landscape of the 20th century. Picasso fue un pintor re famoso. Tenía muchos periodos porque estaba pintando cuando estaba re chiquitito. Entonces, por esto, yo voy a hablar de los dos periodos que fue muy interesante por mí y las diferencias. Bueno, primero, question. When you think of the blue period, ¿en qué piensas? Like, what do you think of? Like, emotion, colors,
Sadness.
Huh?
Sadness.
Poverty.
Failure? Yeah, exactly. Estaba en este periodo azul, it was very sad, he was very sad porque no tenía nada. Él estaba pobre, él estaba triste, and even his society, his surrounding, it was all, they were sad too, they didn't have anybody, they didn't have nothing. So even that can even make you more sad. Pero, que fue muy interesante por mí is, I was looking through other paintings of his in this period, and it was very contrasting. I'm sorry before, but it was also very sexual, very, very sexual. Y puedo ver que
I didn't even see that one in the catalog.
it was very.
I remember that one.
I guess because he was around the prostitutes a lot, he was involved with a lot of sex, and for that too, you can see the man is touching the woman is pleasing the man, and she's open, so you can see like he has this huge different depiction of women, also in his theme of the blue period, which I found extremely interesting because right after he has his rose period, which is very different. Picasso's rose period from 1904 to 1906 marked a transition in his work, characterized by warm colors and themes of love and performance. This era reflects a more optimistic tone, showcasing circus performers and relationships. Entonces, for me, like, it was first like the sad, triste, even the colors, even the objects, even what he saw, like what he fantasized of the sex. He then switched it completely because he fell in love, tenía amor, now he had this new safety.